Welcome on into 19 on the Clock, your Tri-State high school and college sports podcast. I'm your host, Brad Pushkar. Joining me is my co-host, Jackson McCarty. Jackson, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing real good. Just to kind of give you an idea of when we're shooting all this, just got done with some basketball last night for final quarter. Yep. Matter of fact, I was at a couple of, I believe, Southwest Buckeye games, which, coincidentally enough, is the conference we'll be talking about today, or one of them. But before we jump into all that, a lot of college football still to be played, a lot of stuff to still, fully submerge yourself into on that side of stuff.
Yes, obviously, if you listened to us last week, we talked about the Ohio State win over Oregon, and now things are much more laid out for the rest of the semifinal for the playoffs. So we got Texas playing Ohio State, got Penn State playing Notre Dame. A reminder that if you go by just the rankings, 2 of the top 4 teams are still in the playoff.
Yes, but all the bye week teams have
out.
been eliminated.
Yes.
And the only conference that can still have pretty much another conference title game is the Big Ten.
Yep. Yeah, you have Big Ten, SEC, and Independent.
Yep.
So,
which, if you'd have given me $1,000 to spread around the board as to who I thought was going to be in the semis, I would have put $0 on Notre Dame. Because I am one of those folks that does get a little worried, and we do have historical precedent to the Independents not being a tough enough schedule to usually match up with some of those top teams, at least in previous years. This Notre Dame team is not, an average independent school. They have proven to be phenomenal beyond what I expected, at least.
I agree. Notre Dame is always a team. It's funny to me because Notre Dame and Penn State are 2 teams that I wouldn't have guessed.
Right.
In a way.
No.
And it's a little funny that they're both playing each other. I do think Texas and Ohio State both were kind of favorites in a way. Even after that Michigan loss, once you saw what they did against Tennessee, and especially once they've done what they've done against Oregon now, it's hard not to look at the Buckeyes as kind of the favorite.
I don't even think you have to include kind of, to be honest. I haven't been all that impressed with Texas, to be perfectly honest, throughout the year. And then on the other side of stuff, I do like Penn State. I would have, in that $1,000 scenario, I would have put a little bit on them just because I do have a lot of faith in Katron Allen and kind of how that team seems to be operating this year. But, I think you've got to roll with the Buckeyes if you're predicting a winner right now.
I agree, and especially once we've seen I think what's going to be fun about this game is that we may actually get a bit of the weirdest quarterback battle.
Well, it's the Quinn Ewers Bowl.
Yeah. Are you talking about because of the thing that Ryan Day said this week?
Well, because he transferred from Ohio State.
Oh, true.
Wait, what did Ryan Day say?
No, there was something that Ryan Day said this week about how they offered Quinn Ewers a scholarship in 8th grade or something like that.
Well, he took it.
Yeah, and that was kind of the thing, and because people were like, yeah, we offered Quinn Ewers. Oh, tampering and the thing in 8th grade. Dang it.
Well, if he loses that game, I can guarantee a certain amount of Buckeyes fans will clip that and be like, "Hey, fire him! He's tampering."
But no, it's this thing where Quinn Ewers isn't necessarily he's not entering the draft as far as we know right now.
Right, it's pretty up in the air still.
Will Howard isn't going to be a favorite to be taken by the NFL at this point as well,
or at least not in the first couple days
exactly.
of the draft. Yeah,
and but it's kind of I want to go and see if Will Howard just throws all over Texas, and if Quinn Ewers does something crazy, or if Arch has to come in and save things in a later quarter.
Which I would argue that's the more appealing outcome, even though this is Quinn's former team, with his current team, in very similar situations. Arch mania, if you will, is very real. Even with him being on the bench for most of the year, I feel like that's the biggest talking point for Texas still, and that kind of shows you what we're working with there.
Well, I think it's especially because part of the thing with Arch is that people don't expect him to have taken that redshirt year to have been okay with sitting on the bench like this.
Right.
But that's kind of what his family promotes in a way, is that we're going to do it the right way of you're going to earn your stripes that first year as a redshirt. You're going to learn the system in your first full year, and then you take over kind of things like Peyton and Eli did back when they were in college.
Yeah, we thought it was a Trevor situation, but it wasn't.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It wasn't a hit the ground running and get your start. I know Jaden Daniels did it, like at Arizona State. It's one of those things that, like you said, it does kind of throw you through a loop, but with that family, it never should have, I guess.
Correct. And I think it's also, you mentioned the Jaden Daniels thing. It's like so many quarterbacks now, you look at Curtis Rourke with Indiana, where it's like he made his bones at Ohio in the MAC, moved himself up. This is like the first time where somebody's really been like, I will sit at a top school, wait, and go in.
Especially in that transfer portal era. It's very strange to look at, but hey, man, he seems to have verbal commitment to getting that starting job next year, at least from what the reports are saying. So I hopefully, for his sake, it'll pay off. But since you mentioned Curtis Rourke, did you see the report that he tore his ACL?
Tore his ACL the entire year?
For like the last 2.5 months, it's just been winning football games.
Listen, I as a Purdue graduate, I don't love liking Indiana things, but I was like, man, that's a football guy.
Well, and how can you not cheer for Coach Sig? You know what I mean?
Well, I didn't at the end of the year, but
There it goes. I knew it. I was done. But yeah, and then on the other side of stuff, we've talked about it in a little bit, like you said, but Penn State and Notre Dame. If that first one is the Quinn Ewers Bowl, this one is the Overlooked Bowl.
Yeah.
Two schools that over the last probably 10 years have not gotten the respect that they deserve for the success that they put together. And they're finally getting a chance to not only, surpass all those expectations, get to the championship, maybe even bring some hardware home.
And it's like what you said, the matchup of Notre Dame versus Georgia. A lot of people thought Georgia was going to take it.
Right.
I think Penn State, once things got laid out in the bracket, it was kind of like, oh, they'll probably get there.
They're going to get to the semis, yeah.
Playing Boise State was a very good team, but there's just that difference of in mass in a way. You know what I mean?
Like don't get me wrong, teamwork is the ultimate fix it, issue for this. If you guys play well as a unit, it does not matter what stars you came into college or what logos on your helmet or anything like that. But when you're playing 4 and 5 star guys and you're mostly 4 and 3 star guys, maybe some 2 stars, that is eventually going to catch up to you just because there is a certain level of athletic advantage that Penn State did roll into that game with.
And I do have a fun connection with this Notre Dame team that I didn't realize I still had.
Okay.
So did you watch the Georgia game?
No, because I was working. So I caught the last middle of third quarter.
Did you see the I think it was in the fourth quarter near the end, but the pass interference call against Notre Dame. So that player that got that call I covered him when he was in high school.
Oh, really?
Yes, while I was in college. And so it was one of those things where I heard that name and I was like, he's still playing? And I'm pretty sure he's in his graduate year, if I'm not mistaken.
He's got to be a redshirt senior.
Shout out to Jack Kaiser. I remember watching him at Pioneer High School in Indiana, where he was two-way quarterback and I believe a linebacker or safety. And it was just hike him the ball and he would run it, and I was like, yeah, this is a grown man playing this game right now.
Very visibly, dominating.
Very visibly taller, yes. And you're like, oh, he's going to go play in the college eventually.
For a second, and I know the timeline does not match up, and it was not the same flag or anything like that. I thought you were about to say you covered Parker Jones.
Oh, no.
And I was just like, that poor kid, because goodness. Social media is not for him right now.
Yeah, no. Social media is not for most players after a loss.
No, but especially not him. And commentary did not do him any favors.
No. But yeah, let's talk. One other thing I wanted to mention with this Penn State Notre Dame game is that this is because no matter what happens with both those teams, whoever wins, we'll have the first black coach in the national championship game.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, sitting here automatically thinking about it,
you try to go back and you're like, there's not really any coaches that you can think of. So.
College football is also pretty slow to really incorporating all that. So, yeah. But congratulations to whoever that ends up being, because that's really cool.
Yeah, Marcus Freeman or James Franklin.
That's a big part of history.
Yeah, and it's cool to be the coach that does that.
100%. Something you can hang your hat on for the rest of your career.
Let's talk about Lions real quick.
Yep.
We'll talk about the Orange Bowl first, because that is happening on the 9th, which is Wednesday. No, Thursday.
Something.
2 days. 2 days back. Yeah, Thursday. Thursday at 7:30 p.m.
You guys will be able to figure it out.
Notre Dame is currently the favorite by 2 points.
I don't know that I love that.
I don't know.
Honestly,
where does the Orange Bowl is down in like Florida, right?
Yeah. I'm not personally like a fan of when we just do pick 'em. You know what I mean? Like just even lines, pick who you think's going to win. This is a game I would set for that, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think both of them. There's a case to be made for both Penn State and Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame coming off of playing Georgia, maybe in a better headspace.
Yeah. They'll have that momentum and that kind of like, well, we just proved a lot of people wrong. Let's just keep doing it.
Yeah.
But on the other side of stuff, I could see the line for Ohio State, Texas. I think you could raise that.
Yeah, over a touchdown because it's so Ohio State playing on Friday at 7:30, 6-point favorites right now over Texas at the Cotton Bowl. I could see like 7.5.
I think I'd personally take it up to 9.
Okay.
Just because don't get me wrong, I like Texas. I don't think Quinn Ewers is the guy. Sure. I think Ohio State has very much proven that Michigan was very much needed for this team, like we talked about last week, and they do look on a different level. When you beat Oregon and Tennessee in that fashion, it's hard not to be like, well, why? I don't personally think Texas is any better than Oregon. I barely think Texas is better than Tennessee. So,
that's actually, those are very fair comparisons to make. And again, Ohio State was the 8th seed in this playoff, but I also think they're like the second best team. You just had to knock them down because of losing to Michigan, Penn State and Oregon playing a really close Big Ten championship game. Mm-hmm. It's like, are you really going to put them over Texas when Texas was playing well, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
All these different things. I do think Ohio State is still favored. Fans may not love hearing that, where it's like, well, yeah, you should win. Well, why not?
But here's the thing. When you beat really good I don't want to call Tennessee a really good team because they weren't this year. That offense outside of Dylan Sampson wasn't what it needed to be.
They were very solid.
Right. But when you beat teams of that caliber by like 30-something odd points both times, I don't think Texas is anything special outside of that bubble.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, but you guys have performed too well to not be considered the favorites, at least to me.
Yeah.
And Vegas.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to see, though.
We will.
It will be. I do think this will just be a passing battle, and they'll have a good time with that. So.
100%.
So that is it for the college football playoffs. The championship is January 20th, and you will be covering that with someone else because I will be off the week before it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to get Jeremy Rao to help us out on that one. Yeah.
So now you've pressured him, and now he has to.
Exactly. So Jeremy, if you're listening to this, congratulations, you got a spot on the pod. All right, do we want to talk some high school basketball now?
Let's move over to high school basketball. Let's finish up Ohio. You got the Southern Buckeye and Southwest Buckeye conferences for us today.
Not at all confusing.
No, not at all.
All right, so we'll start with the Southern Buckeye boys. Now, you won't have to do any notes on this first one because the American candidates, we've only got one that I want to talk about.
Okay.
The Goshen Warriors, they're 6-3 right now, 4-0 in conference. We've talked about Lakota East. Trey Perry, they did lose to them by 23. They lost to Milford by 8 in overtime and Withrow by 1. They're averaging about a win differential of 4 points per game, give or take.
Okay.
And I'd say they're more offense than defense if you're, kind of looking for something like that. Graham Rourke, 5.6 points per game leads them, but they've got Braylon Settlemeyer, Carson Alderman. They're both going to help out. They average over 10 points. They're a pretty well-rounded team. It's just a question of if they have kind of a takeover option, and whenever they do get up against those Lakota East again, if they have the manpower to rise to that expectation.
Okay. So you're just you're saying Goshen flat out over anyone else?
Yeah. Truth be told, the American Conference is kind of shaky, and then I forget who second place was. They were a little bit above 500, but I believe Goshen had beat them by like 15, 20, and kind of tells you what you need to know.
Okay. So let's move to the national now.
Yes. Yeah. We'll be moving on to the national. Oh, but before we do finish, I do want to mention Batavia, New Richmond. just not. Yeah, those are the two teams that were kind of on that bubble.
Sitting on that bubble.
Right. All right, we got 3 teams on the national side.
Okay.
We'll start with the Bethel Tate Tigers. Now, I was supposed to see them last night, but their games were super delayed, and that is 50 minutes away from the station. So I did get to see their varsity girls team, didn't get to see the varsity boys, but I've been impressed from at least what I've seen through the FQ on our highlights.
Sure.
6-3, they're 4-1 in conference.
Okay.
Their conference loss was a 20-pointer to Williamsburg, who we will talk about.
Cool.
They also lost by about 40 to Southwestern and 34 to MVCA. So the losses are lopsided. Yeah. Right. That's over a 100-point differential just on those 3 losses. So, they're allowing about 55 points per game. If you're looking at their offensive focal points, you've got Griffin Davis, who gets about 16.5 points, 7 boards. You've got Owen Murray, who gets about 15. And then you've got Carter Moss behind them, who's, 11 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals, just to do it all, cover ground. It's a really good roster assembly, but those losses do scare you.
Yeah, definitely.
Understandably. Next up, we'll focus on Claremont Northeastern. They're 4-3. And then 3-1 in conference. They have a loss to Bethel Tate by 3.
Okay.
And then they have the lowest points allowed in conference at 47. They have a fairly average offense, if I'm being honest, but they do have a takeover quality player in Connor Yeager, who I did get to see yesterday.
Okay.
And I believe he is the only senior in their starting lineup. They have a very young team. I heard sophomore 3 times in that running line. And that freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, how often do you see that? But Connor, he's good for over 20 a night. Last time I checked, it said he averaged 22.6 rebounds. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Whatever just happened right there, that's what I did too.
Yeah, I can picture something like that, but that just means he's getting a lot of offensive boards. And
exactly.
That's good.
And
impressive.
Watching him in real time he is very much a drive to the basket, big man. Take you down. I think he's like 6'3", 6'4". But at the high school level, that's usually going to get it done.
Yeah.
So Connor Yeager certainly one to watch. He also gets 3 blocks, 2.5 steals. He is a beast for all intents and purposes.
Okay.
And then this last one, Williamsburg. We mentioned they do have that big win over Bethel Tate, but they're 4-5. 3-1 in conference.
Okay.
They have losses to Felicity Franklin, Clinton Massey, 3 non-cons. Both those are on the other side of the conference. Still averaging about 7 points more than their opponents. Decent 3-point shooting team, 34-ish, around that mark, and it was pretty close to the top of the conference. And then as far as players to know, Brody Fisher, 16.1 and 8 boards. Keon Stamper, 11.6. Those are the 2 guys you're watching.
Okay.
Yeah. So this one is a proverbial grab bag of trying to make heads or tails of it.
I'll be real with you. I once you kind of got to this team, I was like, that's my one.
Okay.
Claremont Northeastern.
Okay. That's kind of what I presumed.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. You just have to try to make sure you're not too scared off by those non-con losses, which, if we're looking at the losses, they do have probably the strongest lineup of that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're
the best losses.
Exactly. And Bethel Tate, like I said, just you need to reduce that margin a little bit.
Yes, that's the thing that kind of was like, oh, okay,
it'll scare you for sure. Yeah, you get into the first round of those playoffs and you end up running into another one of those guys, and you're like, well, can we? If it wasn't even within 15, how close can we get here?
Yes.
But okay, we're rolling with the Rockets on that one, and we can switch over to the girls.
Let's go to the girls.
Yeah, so we've got 2 for the American, and then you won't have to do any notes for the Nationals because there's just 1 there.
Okay.
On the American side, we've got Goshen first.
Okay.
They're 9-2, perfect in division, 5-0. They currently are allowing 38.5 points per game, 4th highest scorers in their conference. So good defense. Offense is decent enough. It's gonna do the job. Aubrey Huxell is a very talented player, about 15 points and 9 boards. Maya Redmond, about 11 points, 8 boards. They're double candidates on a nightly basis, and whenever you can get boards, especially at high school basketball, that is how you win.
Yes.
Absolutely. Most second chance points are going to get it. So Yeah, that would be the primary focus for the Warriors. And then we'll focus on Western Brown next. They are 6-5, 3-1 in division. Now, they did lose to Goshen, but it was only by 3. 6-5.
6-5.
Yes, sir. They did lose to Goshen by those 3 points. They play them again this upcoming Thursday, so we'll be able to, we'll have another chance to kind of use that litmus test. They're the highest scorers in conference, but this was a really well-balanced conference. They're only at 54.9. Like, the difference between first and fourth or fifth was like 3 points.
Okay.
There's not really one explosive offense out in front of all of them. They're all just fairly well-rounded.
Cool.
And then on the higher end of points, you've got Madeline Ruby, 12.3 points per game. And then I don't know if her name is just J or because it was J. Janique, I believe is how you say her last name.
Okay.
And on the school's website, on Max Preps, on the conference website,
everywhere just J.
J.
Okay.
So if I have that wrong, I apologize. But she gets about 11.5 points per game as well. So those are the two primaries on that side.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are your two options here.
I like Goshen.
Yeah.
Again,
that feels fair.
I think you made a good point of that they're going to be matching up again, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But until then,
right?
It's Goshen.
Yeah, and
you take them as the favorite. Right now.
And they did a lot of really good work in non-cons as well, which is very promising, especially because like these conferences are so far off the beaten path that a lot of times you're not going to get the true like best matchups. I guess you are kind of having to settle with who's closest to you. So whenever you do get those non-cons and you're traveling a little bit more, to have that above 500 record does a lot for me.
Absolutely.
Cool. So we can switch to the Southwest Buckeyes Conference now, or Southwest Buckeye.
No, you still have the National to do.
You're right. Sorry. There's just one on this one. Yep.
Yes.
I just blew right through it. It's a good one, too.
Okay.
Williamsburg, 11-1, 4-0 in division.
I'll pick them.
Yep. Pretty easy one, isn't it? Second highest scoring team while allowing 27.8 points per game.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so that's a margin of 20-something. Differential. That one loss, is the only thing that's haunted them so far. They're the best three-point shooters in conference, but that's about 29.5. And then you got two scorers in double digits, Peyton Jones, KK Pollitt.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, what more can you ask for at that point? Yeah.
A good offense is a great defense, right?
Absolutely. And a great defense is a better offense.
Exactly. So, that's what you're looking for in the Southern Buckeye. But now we can go to the Southwest.
Yes.
We've got, for the boys' side, we will just be focusing on the Southwestern Division because most of the Buckeye Division teams are up in that Dayton area, kind of moving towards that stuff, keeping it tri-state focused,
Sure.
So
keeping it between Cincinnati and Dayton rather than north of Dayton.
Right, and kind of letting it bleed off into all that.
Yeah.
So the first team I want to talk to you about, Franklin.
Franklin.
Yep. They are 6-1. 3-0 in conference. Defense is going to be the main focus here, about 46.5 that they allow, and then they average about 59 on the other side, so winning games by double digits. If you're looking for somebody to be a candidate for Conference Player of the Year, you've got one in Kai Cook. He's got about 22.9 points per game. Takeover machine. He can absolutely step in there and just fully control the game. Your second one you've got is Bellbrook, the Golden Eagles. They're currently 6-1, 2-0 in conference. A worrying trend that I noticed looking through their resume, they are yet to score 70, but only 2 games below 50.
Okay.
So, the bottom's probably not going to fall out.
Yeah.
But you worry about how high you're going to be able to get.
How high of a ceiling can you actually reach to?
Exactly. So, the stats say they shoot the ball at a 45% clip as a team, which is crazy, especially considering you haven't gotten past 70, but that's your rate. I think it's mostly because they don't take that many.
Yeah, I was going to say it's either you're playing slow or you're just not taking as many, but the ones you take, you hit.
Yeah, if I recall right, they were kind of in the middle of the pack as far as three-pointers attempted.
Okay.
So, you could afford to up that so long as the percentage kind of stays with you. And then they're also a really good team from the stripe. They almost average about 80% from free throw range as a team. So, you feel good about that. They're pinning their hopes to Austin Webb, who averages about 17, and then David Gregory, who averages about 12 and a half. So, got a couple guys that can contribute for you on the offensive side. And then the last one we'll talk about for the Southwestern is Monroe.
Okay.
Yep, the Hornets are 6-3, 1-2 in conference. So, down a little bit. They've got a 3-point loss to Franklin, 11-point loss to Bellbrook. So, only teams that we've got on this list.
Yes.
But I did want to include them because 6-3 is respectable enough to where, and that Franklin loss being so close,
Still good.
Yeah, you give them a chance there. Second lowest points allowed in conference, fourth highest points per game in conference, 37.7 from three. And they do shoot a few more of them.
Okay.
So, MJ Mapp, 15.7 points per game. Kemper Atha, 15 points per game. Two very valuable scores. Two of the better scores in conference, I'd say. So if, whenever they get into full midseason, end of season form, that could be the difference in getting them over those two losses. So I wanted to make sure to put them on here.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are your options.
No offense to Monroe.
Of course.
Not picking them.
Yeah, no, I understand it. Jacob Murray will be so upset with you.
He can come talk to me. It's fine. I'm gonna pick Franklin here.
Okay. Yeah.
I like just. I mean, when you mentioned Kai Cook and you're like,
yeah,
possible player of the year and all that stuff. I'm like, okay, well,
when that perks yours up, because
like,
we said it I think a million times throughout this basketball preview situation. If you do have that one guy, that changes a lot, and that arguably is more important than almost anything else. Having that takeover candidate. So
yes, absolutely.
Totally understandable on that part. And then we'll start with, again, we're just doing Southwestern Conference, going to the Southwest Buckeye. Two teams for you here. We'll start with Bellbrook.
Bellbrook on the girls.
Yes. 9-2, 4-0 in division. Defense first team, 35.5 points allowed per night. So, you're not going to be able to put too much on them. Yeah. They're still winning games by more than 20 points per game.
Okay.
Yeah, so that differential is doing them a lot of favors. But they are coming off back-to-back losses against Mount Notre Dame. Very good team, 14. And then Wayne by 3. You've got Lauren Fabric as your hot hand. She's got about 16 points per game on average. And then Lily Brunshold is a really good do-it-all partner in all this. 11.9 points per game, 5 boards, 5 assists, 7 steals each night. So, yeah, I mean, the 7 steals especially, it's a consistent 7, too. It's not like, oh, she got 15 one game and 2 one game.
No, she's getting,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, it is
nice.
like I've got 6 this week, I've got 9 this one, I've got 4, I've got 7.
I've got sticky fingers and
right.
I'm taking these balls.
Yes, I am going to get a hold of it. Just, there's not anything you can do to stop it.
It's just whether you're going to have it or not.
100%. 100%. So, yeah, and then their primary opponents for the division, in my mind, is Ross.
Okay.
The Rams are 8-4, 3-1 in division. They did lose to Bellbrook. It was pretty lopsided. It was by 19, 53-34. So, you take that with a grain of salt, but they do have the lowest points per game allowed in conference, 32.8. And then they're scoring kind of near the middle of the pack. I am a little worried about the offense, similar vein in terms of just like, it's not a takeover issue. It's everybody really behind Lainey Tips because she gets 17.3. She has 5 20-plus point game performances so far this year. So, as far as like a special talent, you do have that. And Carmen Boss as well, 13.2 points, 7 boards. Like, she's going to do her part. I don't know that she could really take the top off of that offensive number. You know what I mean? I think she's going to kind of stay around that 13. And then behind that, it really does start to trickle off. So, if one of those folks, not wishing this upon anybody, but has some injury struggles or gets cold or anything like that, you do wonder where those points are going to come from.
Okay. Yeah, it's questioning who's going to come off the bench to really
exactly
appear. Okay. I got to go Bellbrook.
Yeah,
I think.
And I think both of these conferences didn't really lend themselves very well to not picking away from very many favorites.
Sure.
Truth be told. just because they do all sort of have. It's either 4 teams that are almost inseparable, or it's 1 and then 2. Yes. So yeah.
Well, and that's why I'm always of the mind that what are you really gonna, you can a lot of times when you pick an underdog, it's kind of just like, are you picking it because you really think that this is going to happen, or are you just picking it to be
a little different?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can get away with it for some of these, but like Claremont Northeastern, over Bethel Tate for my pick, where it's like there's a little bit of variability and you haven't seen a head-to-head or anything like that yet.
Right.
You can kind of make that call.
And that one was one of those that I was talking about being hard to separate.
Yes.
Just because there's worrying parts and there's good parts on each one of those resumes.
Yeah, and you could easily put both. You could have mentioned one first and the other second, either way.
Right. Yeah, I think you could have organized this however. I usually go by that total record.
Yeah.
So to recap, Brad, you took Claremont Northeastern boys.
Yes.
You took the Goshen girls.
Yes.
You took Franklin, right? Or did you take Bellbrook?
Franklin.
Okay, you took the Franklin boys, and then you took the Bellbrook girls. Okay, yeah. So all but one favorite, essentially.
Yeah.
But that's going to happen. High school basketball is not the most even playing field. It's not the most parity-filled sport. It's really just where the kid's born. You know what I mean?
And sometimes the favorite is the favorite.
Right.
Yeah, that's all there is to it.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, so that wraps us up on the Ohio side. Next week, I'm going to focus on our 3 Indiana schools, and then I am going to figure out how to do the Kentucky stuff. Because, again, I'm still pleading for conferences.
We're giving you 2 weeks to figure out how you're going to shape this up.
Yes, and I'll have a whole week. That's what I'm going to do on my vacation. I'm just going to spend a whole week thinking about how I'm going to do this Kentucky stuff.
Enjoy your vacation.
Yeah, I will. But yeah, easy enough episode, right?
Hey. What more can we ask for sometimes?
Exactly. You just take it easy straight sometimes.
Yeah, but as always, you can follow us on wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts. They're technically different. And then you can always watch along on YouTube, Roku app, and fox19now.com. You can find our Twitters below in the description. Tell us where we're wrong. Tell us what you think.
Yell at me if I left.
Comments.
Yeah, yell at me if I left off your team.
Absolutely.
Like New Richmond, I know I left them off on the first Southern, hold on. I know I left them off in that first one. In the Southern Buckeye, Batavia, New Richmond. If you think I should have had them on here, you've got my Twitter.
Yeah.
Just let me know. Get vocal.
But yeah, and so again, thank you all for listening, and we will see you again next week.
Have a goal.